What's going on everyone, my name is Tom from Dreadlabs and today I'm going to show you how to create these 3 Y2K effects.
Dreadlabs.
Alright, so before we start off this video is sponsored by monsterbundles.com. Monsterbundles.com is a beginner-friendly website where you can sell your assets as a graphic designer. So probably like a lot of you, I always want to make a bit of a passive income as a starting graphic designer, and a good way to do that is by start selling assets. And usually it's a bit hard to do this on Gumroad because on Gumroad you need your own audience. And a good way to start is Monsterbundles because the competition is super low on this website, as well as they only take 50% of your commissions. So because your competition on Monsterbundles is a bit lower, there's also a bigger chance of you to make more sales using your asset packs and your icon packs. Another cool thing about Monsterbundles is basically that you can do this in any style whatsoever. So you don't need to do my specific style, you can just do any style basically that you really want to do yourself. Another good thing about Monsterbundles is that you can withdraw your profits starting from $50 already. So if you make $50 from your assets, you're already allowed to pay those up and move them to your PayPal account if you want to. And not only this aspect of Monsterbundles is easy, but it's also really easy to start and upload your own assets. As you can see on the screen right now, it is very beginner friendly and pretty straightforward. And a product on Monsterbundles that I really like myself was the bird icon pack by Davy's Piece. So I got it for myself and I use it to create this tutorial for you guys. So yeah, if you want to start selling, there will be a link down in the description. Shout out to Monsterbundles again for sponsoring this video. Thank you so much. Alright, so one quick note before we start the video. If you want to get the project file for this, as well as all of the project files for all of my other tutorials, you can become a patron of mine. Stick around until the end of the video to learn more. Alright, so the first one that we're going to do is the famous Y2K Ink Bleed effect. And the real magic of this happens within a gradient map. But yeah, let's just start out with a blank canvas space and I'll show you how to do this one. Alright, so the first step that you want to do is make sure that your whole image is either white on black or black on white. So the first thing you want to do is give this a blur. And the easiest way to do that is by going to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And the amount of blur really depends on the size of your document, and mine is 2000 by 2000 pixels. And I keep my blur radius around 12, and that's quite drastic, but you can change it afterwards if you make sure that the logo you're blurring is a smart object. So I'm just going to press enter. So now for the color, what you want to do is go to the adjustments window, and you can find it under window adjustments. And at the bottom right here is a icon called gradient map, and we'll just click that. And this might not be doing anything super visible for you right now, but I'll explain it a little bit. So you see this gradient here, and this is basically the fade between the darker and the lighter colors. So if we click on this, and if we change the color of the black part, for example, to red, then you can see that this basically is a fade from left to right between the darkest and the lightest colors. So in this case, I map my darkest colors, or the blacks, to the color red. Alright, so the color I'm going to do, and this is basically all up to you, but I'll show you a couple of tricks on how to make a nice subtle Y2K effect. So you want to go for a little bit of a faded darker color. You want to go almost black, but not entirely black. Like this. Same goes for the white. You want to do like a little faded color. Let's see what it looks like with a faded blue, like this. And now where the magic basically happens is at the almost black edge, click on another part of the color and change that color slightly. So in my case, I'm going to go with a bit more purple, maybe even more magenta. Let's take it a little bit more towards blue. And then I'll change this blue color a bit more towards green. So the nice part is if you change this color even slightly, so if we move this more towards purple, as you can see, the edge of this starts changing really subtly, but it definitely gives off that Y2K Ink Bleed vibe. So if you're satisfied with your gradient map, just click OK. And now we're going to add some noise layers. So we don't need any fancy noise textures for this. We can just do this within Photoshop itself. So what we're going to do is make a new layer. And we're going to press Shift Backspace on our keyboard, which brings up the Fill menu. And under Fill, we'll click on the contents and then click on 50% gray. And click OK. And now we have a 50% gray background. And what we want to do with that is go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. We'll make sure that it's monochromatic, uniform, and the amount we can keep this anywhere between 10 and 15 maybe. I'm just going to keep mine at 10. And we want to duplicate this. And the way we're going to duplicate it is by pressing Ctrl or Command J on the keyboard. Alright, so we'll hide the top one first and we're going to get started on the bottom one. So we want to set the blend mode of this to screen. As you can see, this now blends in with the background, but what we want to do is make it a little bit less drastic. And we can do that by pressing Ctrl or Command M on our keyboard. And basically we're going to drag in the sliders here. And because our blend mode is set to screen, we're going to drag these both towards the lower right corner until you're satisfied with the result. And as you can see, this applies mostly to the darker colors of our image. And you probably already guessed what we're going to do with the other one then. We are going to change the blend mode to multiply. Press Ctrl or Command M on our keyboard again. And this time we are going to move the parts to the top left here. And as you can see, this mostly affects the lighter colors, so the background in our case. Alright, so this is how you do the first Y2K Ink Bleed effect. Alright, so let's start out with the second one, which is the oily Y2K Chrome. And I'm not sure if I'm going to remake this thing exactly. I just want to give you the handles to start working with this thing and experiment with it yourself. So the first thing you want to do is make your background color black. So we're going to grab our icon in the layer menu here. Then we're going to go to layer, layer style, and we'll click bevel and emboss. And I'll just reset these to default. What I'm also going to do is give it a color overlay. And for this I'm going to make sure that it's a dark gray color. And for the bevel and emboss, I'm just going to go and up the depth a little bit and up the size a little bit. And we can soften the edges up a little bit as well. The idea of this is that you will give as much different colors in the base as possible. So we'll rename this to base. And this is just for reference so we know what kind of layers we have here. So the next thing we're going to do is duplicate our layer again by pressing Command or Control J on the keyboard. And we'll just call this color overlay 1. And we're just going to clear the layer styles. So we're going to remove the fill. So the difference between fill and opacity is that if you put the opacity slider to 0, it will make your complete layer invisible. If you remove the fill slider to 0%, it will make the layer invisible except for the layer styles. So for example, if we now add a color overlay to this layer, it'll still be visible regardless of the opacity. What we're going to do with this is we're going to use this with an inner glow. So I'll just reset the inner glow to default. And what we're going to do is up the size here. The next thing we want to do is basically, instead of grabbing a normal color, we'll just click on a new gradient. And in my case, I'm going to click on greens, for example, and just click on one of these super vibrant greens. We'll change the opacity to 100% and we'll change the blend mode to difference. And what we're going to do as well is add another bevel and emboss. And in this case, what I'm going to do is remove the soften, up the depth a little bit, and lower the size. And I'm also going to change the gloss contour to ring, which is this one. And as you can see, this gives that more metal kind of look. Now we're going to play with the size a little bit. I'm going to make this one a little bit more small, I think. Now we're going to duplicate this again and rename this to color overlay 2. And I'm going to double click on the inner glow again. I'm going to change the color of these maybe to some purples. And as you can see, once you start changing these, because of the difference blend modes, the colors start changing drastically. Instead of a purple, let's grab a blue. As you can see, yeah, you can get some really cool, nice results and in very different colors and very different shaders. Let's try this one, for example. This one gets really vibrant, and actually I really like this one. And for the bevel and emboss, let's up the size a little bit for this and soften the edges a little bit while lowering the depth at the same time. Alright, so now we kind of already have that effect that we're looking for. There's one thing that I don't really like, and that's because there's a really big solid part here in the middle. It's gonna stay the same color here. And there's actually a nice little solution for that. And the way we're gonna solve this is duplicate our layer one more time by again pressing Ctrl or Command J on our keyboard. And as you can see, by just duplicating this, you'll also get a really nice different color as well. And actually, I really do like this color a little more. So I'm actually gonna let it stay here. And let's duplicate it one more time then. So what we're gonna do right now is remove all of our layer styles again. And we're gonna remove the fill once more. And now we're gonna add another inner glow again. So what we're gonna do right now is change the blend mode to screen. And what we're going to do is basically change the source from edge to center and lower the pixel size a little bit. And what we want to do is pick one color here. Let's go with like a blue maybe. And while clicking on the gradient, we can change the gradient. And what we want to do is basically change the opacity on one of these parts of the slider. So I'm clicking on the top left here and lower the opacity to 0%. And as you can see, what happens now is we get a nice little glow on the edges, and it's actually the opposite of what we want. So let's just put this to edge again. As you can see, now there's a heavy drastic glow in the middle of our design. It's a little bit too much, so let's lower the opacity a little bit. And we want to shrink this down a little bit, which we can do by sliding on the range button here. And the more we would slide this to the left, the more it would shrink. We could also up the size a little bit, like this. And just like that, it only gets visible within this part of our design, which is exactly what we wanted to do. So looking at the difference here, there's also now a nice little gradient in between here. And if you're still not satisfied with the result, you can also still play with the opacity button like this. Alright, so card design on the table. You do need a couple of asset packs by Dreadlabs if you want to do it the exact same way, but I'll let you know some alternatives or places you can leave it in order to get a similar effect at least. So the first thing we want to do is grab an abstract background, and the background that I got here is basically from the Dreadlabs Celestial Render pack. I'll bring it up right now. So basically this pack consists of a lot of different like super abstract looking renders, such as this one, which I used for this example. So if you want to grab this, there is a link down in the description. If you want to do like a similar background yourself, I do have a video on how to make your own surreal textures. I'll link that as well in the description so you can make a couple of these similar textures for free. I'll just drag in this image, and what I want to do is blur this out a little bit just to remove a couple of the details. And I think these Gaussian blurs of 12 should be fine again. And I'll just drag our logo to the front here, and the first thing we want to do is remove the fill again. And what we're going to do now is go to layer, layer style, and we'll add in an inner glow. So again, I'll just reset this one to default. And as you can see, there's a slight line now. So what we want to do is basically grab a blue color, perhaps this one. And we're going to do the same trick as with the last example. We want to remove some of the opacity in this gradient. Alright, so let's up the size a little bit and up the choke. And change the blend mode to soft light. And up the opacity a little bit. And as you can see, this gives off a slight like shine. And we're going to make that even more visible with an bevel and emboss, and reset this to default again. And in this case, let's just up the size a little bit and up the depth. What we do is we'll remove the opacity a little bit on the shadows, and we'll make the highlights a little bit lighter. And now that I'm looking at it, let's just make this a little bit smaller. Something like this is fine. So now we'll duplicate this once more. We'll remove all of the layer styles. I'll remove the fill again, and I'm going to add a bevel and emboss once more. And this time I'm going to change the gloss contour to a ring and up the size a little bit, while also removing the shadow mode even more. Okay, so now we kind of have that glass shape in order. One more thing that we need to change is it's still not visible enough in my opinion. And we can easily change it by going to the adjustments panel. What we're going to do is change the hue and the lightness everywhere where our icon is visible. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to hold Control or Command if you're on a Mac, and click on the thumbnail here in the layer menu. So now we basically have a selection of our logo icon, and then we want to go to Adjustments. Again, this is under Window, Adjustments, and click on the Hue Saturation button. So what's happening now here is you can see that we have a hue saturation adjustment that's only visible where our logo is visible. And you can really see that when we change the hue. As you can see, the color only starts changing wherever our logo is visible. So what we're going to do is slide this a little bit to the left, up the saturation just a little bit, and up the lightness as well. And as you can see, we now have like a glass looking fade. You can also put this at the bottom a little bit, but that does make the accent look a little bit less drastic. So I'm going to keep it at the top here. And there you almost have it. The last thing I want to do is give this thing a Y2K glow. I'm going to do this using a Photoshop action, which I got on Dreadlabs.net as well. So under the Dreadlabs Styling Kit Volume 2, there is a effect called Y2K Photo Glow. So what I want to do is basically make a duplicate of our image and run that through our Y2K Photo Glow effect. So what I'm going to do is press Command or Control, Alt or Option, Shift and E on my keyboard. And this makes a duplicate of everything that's visible within our layer. And now what I'm going to do is run the Y2K photo glow effect, and there you have it. You get this super hazy like glow. So if you do not have the money to buy these action packs, which I of course can imagine, that's completely fine. You will however support Dreadlabs a lot if you do, but I'll show you another alternative way to get at least a similar effect. So again, we'll press Ctrl or Command, Alt or Option, Shift and E on our keyboard to make a duplicate of everything that's visible within our layer. So as you can see, we now have a double layer, and what we're going to do is go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, change that to how many you want. I'll change mine to 30, and then we'll change the blend mode to soft light, and there you have a similar effect. Alright guys, there you have it, 3 Y2K effects for your logos and designs. Once again, a huge shout out to masterbundles.com for sponsoring this video, and another shout out to all of my Patreons, because if you want to get the project files for this tutorial, so this whole Photoshop package, as well as all the project files from all of my other tutorials, you can become a Patreon of mine. So if you don't know, by becoming a Patreon you will support the channel, keep up the weekly videos, and besides getting access to my project files, you also get a 15% discount in my asset web store, as well as an exclusive Discord role. If you go 1 tier up, you'll also get access to exclusive video tutorials, as well as even more project files. So if this is something you're interested in, there's a link down in the description. Leave a like, a comment and a subscribe if you haven't already. And with all of that being said, this was Tom from Dreadlabs. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.